Can I really love my enemy? A 3-day challenge, I've got to be honest. Love your enemy always sounded like a spiritual fantasy to me, something noble you read in a book, but completely impractical for real life. It's easy to nod along when you're sipping tea and feeling philosophical, but when someone has genuinely, deeply hurt you, when they've chipped away at your peace and maybe even your sense of self, then it feels not just difficult, but utterly impossible. The idea of extending anything resembling love to them, my brain just short-circuited. So, I decided to put this radical teaching to the ultimate test. Not in a seminary, not in a meditation retreat, but right here, in the messy middle of my own lingering resentment. For 3 days, I committed to seeing if bitterness, that insidious, quiet companion, could actually be dismantled. Could this age-old wisdom be a practical reality? Or was it just another impossible ideal, a spiritual flex that most of us mere mortals could never achieve? I was a skeptic, but I was also desperate for a change. The setup. My backstory is probably pretty familiar, even if the details differ. In one brutally efficient sentence, a friend, someone I trusted, leveraged my biggest insecurity against me in public. Bam, just like that. That was 8 months ago, and honestly, it felt like it happened yesterday. Since then, I've replayed that scene at 2 a.m. more times than I'll ever admit. Dissecting every word, every look, every possible alternative reality where I had a better comeback. Resentment isn't just an emotion anymore. It's become my quiet, unwelcome roommate, always there, subtly influencing the vibe of my entire mental apartment. It saps my energy, clenches my jaw, and steals my joy. I was tired of paying rent for this uninvited guest. Now, let's be super clear. I'm no monk, no therapist, and definitely no saint. I'm just a normal person, navigating a normal life, who simply doesn't want to carry this crushing weight anymore. This isn't about becoming best friends or pretending the hurt didn't happen. It's about personal liberation. So, I set some pretty simple, yet surprisingly daunting, parameters for my 3-day experiment. Day 1, I will not speak ill of them. This wasn't just about external silence. It was about trying to break the endless loop of negative internal commentary. The goal was to starve the resentment beast of its favorite food, verbal and mental rehashing of grievances. It's the first step in disrupting the cycle of animosity, a crucial act of self-control that stops the outward projection of pain. Day 2, I will actively wish them well in my thoughts. This felt like a leap into the absurd. Wishing well for someone who hurt you. It felt counterintuitive, almost like a betrayal of my own pain. But the idea here was to intentionally cultivate a different kind of thought, to actively push against the ingrained patterns of anger and ill will. It's an internal empathy exercise, a deliberate attempt to see them not just as the enemy, but as a fellow human being. Day 3, I will perform one anonymous act that could benefit them. This was the big one, the tangible step. No recognition, no praise, no de so. Dieu, art of kinds, done in secret. The point wasn't about them knowing, but about me doing. It was designed to be a profound shift from passive non-aggression to active, albeit hidden, benevolence. It's about putting the radical teaching into physical motion, cementing a new neural pathway. No forced reconciliation, no fake hugs, No cheesy let's be friends again gestures. This was purely for me. Just 3 days of deliberate, countercultural effort to see if I could shift something deep inside. Day 1, morning check-in, I woke up already annoyed, which, let's be real, ett exakt groundbreaking start what, we're attempting a love your enemy challenge. My brain was already cataloguing the day's potential irritations. The first real test, however, arrived before I'd even had my coffee. A mutual friend, bless their oblivious heart, texted a meme mocking the whole situation that had caused my resentment. My thumb literally hovered over my phone screen, twitching. I could feel the heat rising. A reply formed instantly in my mind, a witty, scorching retort that would have shredded everyone involved, the mutual friend. Them, and probably any shred of my own peace. It was so tempting to unleash that verbal grenade. But then I remembered the rule for day 1. I took a deep breath. My thumb moved, not to send, but to delete the draft. Score 1 for the challenge, I thought, a tiny, almost imperceptible victory. The afternoon brought a new tactic. I tried that mindfulness trick I'd read about, label the emotion without judgment. Instead of getting swept away by the familiar wave of anger, I tried to observe it. This is anger, I whispered internally. This is a tight chest. This is the replay loop starting again, naming it, identifying its physical and mental manifestations, somehow gave me a sliver of distance. It didn't vanish, not by a long shot, but it shrank, slightly. It became an object I could observe, rather than a current I was drowning in. It felt like putting a name to a monster makes it a little less scary, a little less all-consuming. Evening reflection, I actually managed not to rant, either internally or externally. That, in itself, felt profoundly different. My usual routine would be to stew, to mentally argue, to fuel the fire. Tonight, the fire was still there, but it wasn't raging out of control. I jotted down 3 short sentences in a notebook, just a quick acknowledgement of the day's struggles and small wins. And then I closed it like a tiny jail door on today's thoughts. It was a symbolic act, a deliberate choice to not let the day's frustrations spill over into my sleep. My internal progress meter, if I had one, probably sat at a meager 5%. Tiny, almost laughable, but it was definitively pointed in the right direction. And for someone who'd been stuck in reverse for 8 months, that felt like a monumental shift. Day to morning intention, today I had to wish them well. Just the thought of it made my brain offer up a profanity instead, a visceral rebellion against the idea. It felt like forcing a smile when your heart is breaking. My internal resistance was palpable, a wall of no way. I literally had to breathe through 30 seconds of that intense pushback, reminding myself it was an experiment, a challenge. Finally, I landed on the most basic, almost ridiculous. Prayer I could fake. May they have a good lunch. It felt stupidly small, utterly insignificant, but something happened. As I muttered those words, a subtle, almost imperceptible tension released in my body. Mi skulder, really realized, tratamita. It was a physical manifestation of a tiny mental shift, a crack in the wall of my animosity. Midday experiment. I tried something even stranger. I imagined sitting opposite them at a cheap cafe, the kind with mismatched chairs and lukewarm coffee. I didn't imagine an apology or a reconciliation. Instead, I just pictured them across the table, hearing why they did what they did. Not an excuse, mind you, but an explanation. I pictured their face, tired. I imagined their own fears blaring, the pressures they might have been under, the insecurities they might have been projecting. Suddenly, they weren't just the villain in my personal drama. They were less of a caricature and more of a human being who messed up, someone perhaps caught in their own web of pain or misunderstanding. It wasn't about condoning their act, but about recognizing their humanity. That small exercise in perspective-taking, even if purely imaginary, chipped away at the solid block of my anger. Nighttime honesty, I still didn't like them. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. But the mental movie, the endless replay of the hurtful scene, was playing on fewer screens in my head. It wasn't dominating the entire multiplex of my mind anymore. There was space for other thoughts, other feelings. And then something truly unexpected happened. While washing dishes, a chore I usually dread in silence, I caught myself humming. Not just humming, but a little tune, a melody I hadn't hummed in months, maybe even a year. It was a small, quiet, utterly unforced moment of joy. It was a sign that the iron grip of resentment was loosening, allowing a sliver of lightness to re-enter me life. My internal progress meter climbed to 30%. No fireworks, no dramatic epiphanies, but the ground beneath my feet was undeniably, subtly shifting. Day 3 sunrise panic. Today was kindness day. The anonymous benefit, no credit, no witness, just pure, unadulterated giving. This was, by far, the most terrifying parameter. It felt incredibly vulnerable, almost like I was breaking some unspoken code of self-preservation. My brain screamed, "Why help someone who hurt you?" But the challenge was the challenge. I remembered they were actively hunting for a new job, a detail I'd heard through the grapevine. A risky thought, but an idea sparked. I found their professional portfolio link online, discreetly shared it to a private Slack group premier Emin, group with a few people who might be able to help, and then just as quickly I deleted the message history so my name wouldn't appear. It was microscopic, a tiny, almost invisible gesture, but it counted. It was an act of genuine, selfless well-wishing hidden from view. Later, that afternoon, a strange encounter. I was walking past a street preacher, the kind who usually makes me speed up and pretend I don't hear him. He was yelling about hellfire and forgiveness, the usual mix. Normally, I just hustle past, lost in my own thoughts. But today, something made me pause. I listened for about 30 seconds. He quoted Luke 6:35, where Jesus says God is kind to the unthankful and wicked. The words hit me with an unexpected force. God is kind to the unthankful and wicked. And here I was, struggling to be anonymously kind to someone who, in my mind, was just one of those things. The coincidence felt less like a random street sermon and more like a gentle, unmistakable wink from the universe. It was a reminder that this path I was attempting wasn't just some personal experiment. It was part of a larger, ancient wisdom. Evening wrap-up. I found myself sitting on the back step, half expecting a lightning bolt of revelation to strike, a sudden, dramatic understanding of everything. But nothing so theatrical arrived. Instead, there was just a quiet sense, a gentle whisper in my spirit that the story no longer owned me. The anger, the replay, the constant mental tug-of-war, it had all faded into the background. I checked inside for bitterness, really digging deep. It was still there, sure, a faint echo, but it was smaller, so much smaller. It felt like a pebble in a boot now, rattling around, annoying sometimes, but manageable. It was no longer the boot itself, dictating my every step, weighing me down with its oppressive presence. The fundamental shift was undeniable. Results so, can you really love your enemy? My answer, I'll admit, is annoyingly nuanced. It's not a simple, clean yes. I don't feel fuzzy affection, certainly not best friend bracelets material. But here's the profound truth, the active, consuming hatred, the kind that had been dictating my emotional landscape for months, has lost its monopoly. It no longer holds absolute power over my thoughts and feelings. That, my friends, is monumental. Through this tiny, 3-day challenge, I gained 3 incredibly valuable things. 1. Mental shelf space. This is huge. For so long, a significant portion of my mental real estate was occupied by the grudge. It was like a constant, noisy tenant in my head, replaying arguments, crafting imaginary comebacks, churning with anger. Now, that space has been largely vacated. I can actually think about actual life, my work, my creative projects, my relationships, my future, instead of constantly rehashing the past. It is like clearing out a cluttered attic and suddenly realizing how much room you actually have for new, beautiful things. 2. Physical relief. The emotional weight of resentment isn't just in your head. It's in your body. For months, I hadn't realized how much tension I was carrying. My jaw was perpetually clenched, my shoulders often hunched, a knot in my stomach a constant companion. Over these 3 days, particularly as I moved through the intentional acts, I felt a physical unwinding. My jaw isn't clenched all day anymore. I'm sleeping a little better. It's a subtle but undeniable easing of chronic stress, a tangible release that makes me breathe easier, literally. 3. Agency. This, for me, might be the most powerful takeaway. For months, I felt stuck, a victim of someone else's actions, held hostage by my own reactions. This challenge proved to myself irrevocably that I'm not stuck. I am not defined by what happened to me. I can choose a response, a different path, even when my emotions are lagging behind, screaming for the old. Familiar patterns of anger and bitterness. It's a profound reclaiming of personal power, a demonstration that I have the capacity to choose my internal state, regardless of external circumstances. It's about taking back control of my own narrative. Loving your enemy, it turns out, is far less about a sentimental emotion and much more about issuing an eviction notice. You're not inviting them to dinner. You're kicking the resentment, the bitterness, and the consuming anger out of the driver's seat of your life. And that, my friends, is true freedom. If you're wrestling with something similar, if a grudge has taken root and is stealing your peace, please try this. Don't write off the idea of loving your enemy as impossible fluff. Just try the 3-day microversion. It's low stakes, and it might just surprise you. Day 1. Bite your tongue, internally and externally. Just stop the negative feedback loop. Day 2. Wish them well in secret, even if it feels absurd. Day 3. Do one hidden thing that helps them. No credit, no witness. You don't have to tell anyone. You don't have to feel warm and fuzzy. Just do the acts. Then drop a comment below and let me know even if it's only 5%. Even that tiny shift is a monumental victory. Your story, your small victory, might be the very thing that nudges someone else who feels just as stuck as I did to give it a try. Let's share these small acts of rebellion against bitterness. Why it works so. Why does this seemingly simple, almost silly, 3-day challenge actually work? Well, it's got deep roots in both psychology and spiritual wisdom. From a psychological perspective, what we're doing here is often called repetition with escape. Our brains are incredible pattern recognizers. And when we constantly ruminate on a hurt, we're essentially reinforcing a neural pathway, creating a superhighway for resentment. Each small act in this challenge, the deliberate silence, the forced well-wishing, the anonymous kindness, tells your brain again and again that there's an exit ramp from that loop of rumination. You're not just passively waiting for feelings to change. You're actively building new neural associations. By engaging in empathy exercises, even imagined ones, and performing anonymous kindness, you're stacking new, positive pathways on top of the old hurt. You're consciously choosing to think and act differently, which, over time, literally rewires your brain. The original injury doesn't magically vanish, but its power to define your mental and emotional map is profoundly diminished. It stops being the compass guiding your every thought and emotion. Mindfulness, which I touched on, plays a huge role here too, allowing you to observe your emotions without judgment, creating the space needed to choose a different response. It is about accepting the reality of your feelings while simultaneously choosing not to be controlled by them. Spiritually, Jesus' command in Matthew 5:43-48, where he tells us to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us, isn't some impossible moral trap designed to make us feel guilty. It's actually a profound freedom strategy, a radical path to liberation. Think about it. When you refuse to recycle evil, when you break the cycle of retaliation and bitterness, you're not just being nice. You are actively interrupting the relay race of pain that so often defines human conflict. You're choosing not to pass on the torch of animosity. This kind of love, often referred to as agape love, isn't about liking or even forgiving in the sense of excusing wrongdoing. It's about actively seeking the good of the other, even when they've caused you harm, and leaving judgment and justice to a higher power, as Romans 12:17-19 suggests. It's a profound act of self-preservation, because holding on to hate hurts you more than it hurts them. Moreover, when you choose this path, you are mirroring a God who, as Luke 6:35 reminds us, is kind to the unthankful and wicked. You are reflecting a divine love that refuses to let human cruelty, or even your own pain, have the final word. It's a powerful witness, not just to the world, but to your own soul of a deeper, more resilient kind of love. If this kind of challenge rude both practical and ancient wisdom resonates with you more than dry, dusty textbook lectures, then hit that subscribe button. I'm all about exploring how these big ideas actually play out in real life. And if you know one person who scoffs at the idea of forgiveness, autant qui tu juffles, practice with them. Maybe, just maybe, they'll be intrigued enough to test it too. Conclusion. 3 days, honestly, won't manufacture best friend, bracelets, or magically erase all the hurt. Let's be realistic. But what they can do, profoundly, is pry open a door that you might have thought was permanently sealed shut. I walked into this challenge a full-blown skeptic, convinced it was a fool's errand. I walked out lighter, not because the problem vanished, but because its grip on me had loosened. I'm still a work in progress, absolutely, but I am no longer a hostage to the past. The pebble of bitterness may still rattle around in my boot from time to time, a reminder of what was. But here's the crucial difference. It's no longer steering the boot. Première âme. And that, for now, is more than enough. It's a beginning.